One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. Oh, no, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Trey, history is filled with great moments of the Mongolian reversal. I think Emperor Khan started that out with his cavalry play back in the early days of human history. You have the British at Waterloo conquering Napoleon. I think of Yorktown, the founding of our great nation. And I think Tennessee deciding to move on and say, no thanks, we're good, bud, to Nico Iamaleava can join that rank. Blockbuster news that we woke up to this morning. We're recording this on a Saturday morning. It's probably coming out either Sunday or Monday, depending on when you're listening or watching to this. But Trey, a lot to react to, I think a lot of thought experiments to dive into, to try and unearth what on earth Iamaleava's camp is thinking, the cojones of Tennessee. What were your initial thoughts when you read that news?
Well, first of all, I never know where you're going to go with the intro line of the show, and Genghis Khan was nowhere near my 5th, 6th, or 7th bingo card, so kudos to you on that. That was great. But, man, my first thought is, hallelujah, we finally have some news to talk about, because this has been one of the most low-key, fly-under-the-radar off-seasons that I can remember in quite some time. No conference realignment, major conference realignment news, no major scandals, no coaching big things. We had Stanford and Colorado signing Deion to an extension that we talked about last week, but this is the first major blockbuster news. And man, this whole story, the fact that it moves so fast, it first got on our radars probably late this week. I think we started seeing some whispers about it on Thursday. It really blew up on Friday, when Nico reportedly skipped some meetings and skipped the walkthrough before their spring game, which is taking place today, mind you, as we're recording this on Saturday. It might be must-watch TV on a second screen today. But just how fast this moved was incredible to me. I'm sure this was going on behind the scenes for some time. There's no way that this wasn't... There had to be some wheels turning behind the scenes, but how quickly this moved into the public eye and now has just ultimately resulted in Tennessee saying no thanks to their sitting starting quarterback. It's unprecedented in big-time college football, and the ramifications are going to be huge.
I got the feeling of, in The Office when the warehouse wants to unionize and Michael is saying they're not being paid enough, and then Jan walks down and is like, all of you guys will be unemployed and taken care of and sued into oblivion. That's kind of what it felt like, because you could feel the air in the balloon of Nico's camp, right? His dad is tweeting at Pete Nakos of On3, saying that he's lying through his teeth as he was reporting this and realizing that they're losing their leverage, right? That as soon as this news came out that Nico's sitting out of practice and holding out for a bigger deal, the public just turned against them. Like, they lost in the court of public opinion in a unanimous vote. There is nobody that I've seen or read, even from Rocky Top fans, Tennessee fans, are wholeheartedly against Nico here. And so you could feel the air just rush out of the balloon as soon as that got confirmed and as soon as that news was made public. And I tweeted an all-time Art of the Deal moment with a screenshot from ESPN's playoff recap when Tennessee lost to Ohio State. The last time that we saw Nico in action, quoting the ESPN article, the Vols finished with just 256 yards, but a big chunk of that came late when the game was already out of reach. They managed just 3.7 yards per play. Iamaleava finished just 14 for 31 for 104 yards, his lowest total of the season, and he rushed for a career-high 20 times for 47 yards. That was in a 42-17 blowout in the first round of the college football playoff. And Nico and his camp, his dad, his agent, whoever his agent is, they really thought, yep, now is the time to go get a raise. That blew my mind.
Yeah, and I think that kind of encapsulates the experience of this for the Tennessee fan base, because if you watched as this was developing early on this week, when the story was starting to break, a lot of the Tennessee fans I saw were kind of on Nico and his dad's side. They were kind of rallying against the On3 Mafia. Pete Nakos in particular was catching a lot of heat from Vol Nation. And I think at that point, with the information that we knew at that time, kind of rightfully so, rally around your guy. But yeah, as this developed and as you start to see, okay, he's sitting out and skipping required team meetings. He's sitting out and skipping practice. He's treating this like we see NFL players do every offseason, but it's NFL players with a lot more skins on the wall than Nico, respectfully, more skins on the wall than Nico has at this point in his career. So yeah, to watch, I just think about it from the perspective of a Tennessee fan, to go from going into the playoff, kind of the under the radar SEC team. They went 10-2, but no one was really talking about them. Then the matchup comes out with Ohio State. They're going on the road, but you see all this information about how many tickets their fans are buying, how they're going to turn it into Neyland North. And they followed that up. There was a lot of orange in those stands coming into a game against an Ohio State team that was coming off the lowest of the low of their Ryan Day tenure, losing to Michigan. And to spend all the money that they did, to talk all the talk that they did online, and then have your starting quarterback just lay a complete egg in front of the entire college football world. You lose a lot of good grace. And I know Nico's young. He has a lot of football ahead of him. He is a really good quarterback. Wherever he lands, we'll talk about that in a little bit. They're getting a really good piece to the puzzle. But when it's coupled with all of the context that came around it and how the season ended, there's just no way that you were going to win the PR battle in this. Like, you did not come into this with any of the chips. Now, if you had won a game in Columbus and maybe flamed out in the second round, totally different story. But the expectation is to at least make it to the playoff in Tennessee. And with most of the schools in the SEC, that's the expectation. And the expectation is to put up a good showing in the playoff at this point with the 12-team playoff. So they had no chips on their side of the table. They had nothing in their corner, and they were acting like they had a lot more leverage than I think they ultimately did.
Yeah, it's one thing when, and I was trying to like put myself in his shoes, right? Because I wanted to try and understand, okay, like what is his camp side thinking? Because his camp woke up this morning feeling justified in their demands, right? You know that whatever rationale they have, it makes sense to them. But the more I dug into it and the more that I, looked at his stats, and yes, Nico is a good quarterback. There's no doubt about it. He's got all the tools. I think he will put up numbers wherever he ends up going, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But he did not have an outstanding season, right? It's one thing to come back to the negotiating table with your boss and say, hey, I'd like a raise after you've surpassed quarterly numbers, after you've, set new benchmarks for the company. You've taken them to new heights. You've stood out. You look at Nico's stats and he didn't do that, right? 19 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That's fine. But then you look at who he threw those touchdowns against, and they're all against sub-average teams. He had a good game against Vanderbilt in the season finale when he threw a season high 4 touchdown passes, but then it's 4 against UTEP, it's 2 against Mississippi State, it's only 1 against Kentucky, it's only 1 against Kent State, and I know he had limited reps in that game. It's 2 against NC State. That team flamed out in a hurry, right? And then the solid defenses that he's playing, the good defenses, Georgia, nothing. Alabama, he has 1. Florida, nothing. Arkansas, nothing. Oklahoma, 1 in a bloody, brutal, ugly game on a Saturday night. I'm not trying to say he's not a good quarterback. He was a redshirt freshman, right? We came out of that season going, okay, solid start, a lot of room to grow, a lot of things we got to work on. Oh my goodness, we've got to hit more wide open wide receivers on the post route. We've got to learn how to step up into pressure, but you know what? A good first start. in Tennessee. And then to come back to the negotiating table and go off of that, let me reset the market. To your point, like Saquon Barkley is resetting the market because he's Saquon Barkley. No one is going, yeah, we need to pay this guy 4.5 a year. It's just not realistic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I love that you reminded everybody that he's a redshirt freshman this past year. He's
19 years old.
He's not a guy that this is going to be his only payday either. You know, if there's a guy that was kind of mediocre and led his team to the playoff, but it was kind of behind a run game and a defense, and we knew he wasn't going to be a pro prospect in a couple of years, like we absolutely knew that, or if he was going into his last year of college football and we knew, hey, the odds of you getting drafted in a position where you're going to stick with an NFL franchise at this point are pretty low, I support it a little bit more, right? Like I support going and getting the bag, but this just felt from the beginning so short-sighted because not only are you alienating yourself from the Tennessee fan base, you've completely burned that bridge, obviously, but what fan base is going to be really excited to welcome you in on your team? What fan base, because now you've burned the bridge of not only Tennessee, but the entire SEC, right? Like the SEC rules say that you cannot transfer in intra-conference in the spring portal. And that means not only can, we'll get to the Tennessee fallout of this in a little bit, but Nico cannot go to another SEC school. Tennessee cannot poach from another SEC school. Mm-hmm. So you burned an entire conference. And mind you, one of the only two conferences that has a deeper pocket of teams that are willing to pay what you're asking for. So you've burned a lot of bridges. You're only 19 years old. It's just so short-sighted. Like, go ball out and then renegotiate, right? Like, have the stats to back it up. Then you're going to have every team in America beating down your door in next offseason, and you have a lot of leverage. It's just really, really confusing why they did it right now and why he was doing it right in the middle of this spring portal window, because his leverage is just not there.
Yeah, I think to your point, the floor of going out and getting a big NIL deal at another school, it's not all that high, right? I mean, Quinn Ewers is a great example of this. Supposedly had a $6 million NIL offer somewhere in the Midwest to come back to school for one more year. I don't think anybody thinks he's a great NFL prospect. He's a fine quarterback. He'll go, day 2, maybe early day 3, and be a backup quarterback in the NFL, hopefully for a long time. Like he was a good college quarterback. He didn't have to just destroy opposing defenses and hit every throw in order to get that kind of money thrown at him. And so I think you're right. I think Nico given one more year at Tennessee with a solid team, they're going to have good weapons. I think that he would have been in a great position to go, you know what, thanks, but I'm going to go chase the money if that's truly what it all is about for him. I think the other thing that just leaves me scratching my head is, I feel like you were kind of describing a Curtis Rourke, right, who is on a 1-year NIL deal to come to Indiana, not a top pro prospect, really hit some great throws, but also really benefited from a defense that stepped up from a running game. But he was on a 1-year. He had one shot. It was a 1-year deal. Nico had negotiated a multi-year deal coming out of high school. He had set the NIL market, right? I mean, the rumor was $8 to $12 million coming out of California. And to say, 1 year into your playing career, nope, sorry, the rate's gone up. Again, that just leaves me scratching my head. So you brought up a good point about the spring portal window. Nico, we'll see where he ends up landing. We can talk that in a minute, but I want to talk about Tennessee because they did have the backbone to say, nope, we don't negotiate with terrorists. We're not going to let you hold us hostage. And now they will enter their spring game today with 2 scholarship quarterbacks. They go into the spring window without a quarterback that's taken a meaningful college snap and an SEC schedule that is the SEC schedule, right? And the expectations of a fan base that, are one of the upper echelons. So talk to me about where Tennessee is in this moment and, what do you kind of anticipate them doing here in this spring portal window that opens up in 4 or 5 days?
Yeah, I mean, you look at 2 scholarship players on the roster at the quarterback position. Jake Meckinger, I think, is the guy that would be the heir apparent, and that's a guy that going into this season is going to have about the same amount of experience that Nico Yamilava had going into last season. A little bit less, way more mop-up time. And of course, Nico got the bowl game in his true freshman year, but relatively the same amount of meaningful experience. So the good news for Tennessee is they're the ones that have seen him in practice. They've seen these 2 guys. They're going to get to see him in the spring game as we're recording this in a couple of hours. That'll be fascinating to see. They've gotten to see them every day in practice. They know what they're working with, so they know kind of where they need to put their chips on the table here. I just don't know who's going to be available that's eligible to transfer to them because, like I said earlier, they can't poach from another SEC school. You never know. Anybody that's going to enter the portal in the spring window is a guy that lost his battle, right? Like it's not going to be guys other than Nico that would be sitting starters. They're coming out and they're transferring in the spring window because they already know, even if it hasn't been announced formally, the writing's on the wall that they're not going to be the guy at their prospective school. So are you going to go all in and offer a guy that lost his job in the spring at probably a lesser school than Tennessee, unless it's just a really perfect situation at another place? I don't know. Like, that's not going to be a perfect option. So if I'm Tennessee, I am probably going to try to get an experienced backup that wants to play at an SEC school that's taken a lot of reps, but is okay with coming in and being in a competition and not guaranteed a starting spot. I think that's probably the sweet spot for Tennessee. I think you got to see what Meckinger's got. He's a young guy. He's going into he'll be a redshirt freshman this year, right? Was he a freshman last year?
I can't remember if he's a freshman or if he was a redshirt freshman.
Okay, but underclassmen nonetheless, like would have a couple years of eligibility left after this year. So I think you got to kind of see what you have in him. See a guy that knows the system. It's going to be really rough because they undoubtedly were building the offense around Nico's strengths. So you've got to figure that out in the next few weeks before summer workouts start and summer and fall camp starts back in August. But yeah, I mean, if I'm Tennessee, I think the right way to probably go, unless there's just a shocker entry to the portal from another conference, I think you've got to find a guy that's okay with being in a competition and probably being QB2 and seeing what you've got with Meckinger, seeing if he's somebody that you can build around and then going hard in the portal the next year if he's not.
Yeah, it truly feels like it resets Tennessee maybe back to ground zero, where you're coming off a playoff appearance. You didn't get where you wanted to go in conference, but obviously still made it to the first round, had all this momentum, and then suddenly it's come to a screeching halt. There's no doubt that I think the Volunteer front office is trying to make lemonade out of lemons in this situation. But I do think the respect that they've garnered from their own fan base, I think from college football fans as a whole, is really positive, right? To stand up and honestly kind of defend the integrity of the sport a little bit, to kind of wake up and smell the roses and go, hang on, we're not gonna let a 19-year-old push us around, I think is good for the health of college football. Now, does that mean that recruits are a little less likely to pick Tennessee or a little gun shy if they go, you know what, I can get an easier payday somewhere else? That's something that they're going to have to potentially fight through. But I do think they've got talented options in their 2 scholarship quarterbacks. George McIntyre is the other one, 5-star recruit from a couple of years ago. I think George McIntyre might be the biggest winner in all of this because before, when he committed to Tennessee, it was like, dude, why? Like, Nico's already there. Like, you're a backup for 3-4 years. Kind of at best case scenario if you're staying there. And now he's got a path directly to win that job and kind of be the hero that Tennessee maybe was hoping he would be when they recruited him. I think on the other side for Nico, it's very interesting because there's no doubt, as I said earlier, there's no doubt that his family never meant for this to go public. On3 really pulled the rug out from under them in their mind, right? I'm not faulting Pete Nakos for reporting this. Good for him.
Well, yeah, I was about to say, I think if you don't want it to go public, maybe like sit this one out, right? Like you have to have the expectation that you are at a big time SEC school, that is going to get out at some point, right? If you think that that's everybody is just going to keep that a secret, especially the people that are involved in giving you the money that you're probably pissing off, like, yeah, I've got a bridge to sell you, man. Like that's not going to work.
Well, and I think I don't think it was like, it wasn't an official report. It was just some pundit tweeting saying, I bet what happened was Tennessee did not like the way this was going. They leaked the news to Nakos to see, hey, will the public rally around us? And they hit big, right?
Right. Like you, if you're the Iamaleava family, you made some powerful enemies, for lack of a better term, in Knoxville by the way that you handled this. So you shouldn't be surprised when they leak it to some friendly journalists that will spin it in a way that makes you look very bad.
Yeah, totally agree. I think for Nico, as interesting as the Tennessee situation is, you painted the picture. You cannot transfer in the SEC. So you start to think about, where could Iamaleava go that, one, he will be the guaranteed starter, probably a decent number of places, but two, who on earth is going to pony up $2 to $4 million in the spring portal window when most of your quarterback depth charts are set? Most of your NIL dollars have already been distributed, and we're not to the place of collective bargaining yet where there's a set structure. But the general managers of the biggest programs, they're not going into spring ball with just loose dollars available for their quarterback depth chart. That's been set probably for months at this point. And so you have
the House settlement coming up that is going to further complicate things and make it more like a salary cap situation, where it is like an NFL team saying, yeah, we're going to let you walk because we have to pay all these other guys too.
Yeah. So, a couple of teams that jumped off the page for me, just purely as I reacted to this, you start to wonder about, this California kid, maybe goes back to the West Coast. What does USC have to say about this? I'm sure the Trojans would welcome him with open arms. Now you have Jaden and Mailava still there, right? Won you the bowl game. Kind of feels like it's his ship. You poached Hassan Longstreet from Texas A&M. Promised him, by the way, in that recruiting battle that, hey, man, you could actually be the starter this year. As a true freshman, you could be the starter for this team. So that complicates things. I think about Oregon, and Dante Moore supposedly is balling out in spring ball. He's supposedly been playing very well for the Ducks. He's waited his turn. He transferred in behind Dylan Gabriel to sit for a year, and then was supposed to get the Kings the castle. Does Oregon risk bringing Iamaleava in and bringing in a talented quarterback, but upsetting, kind of the ecosystem that you've created? I saw that Texas Tech got thrown out there by our friend Stats of War.
They certainly have the money. They have the warmonger war chest to go get that.
Didn't their biggest oil baron just sell his company for billions of dollars? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and they paid a basketball player, their best basketball player, like $6 million, I think, or something like that.
That's right. Toppin, right?
Yeah, to forego the NBA draft this year.
Sick, man. It's a good
if you want the dark side of NIL battles, go follow Big 12 basketball right now. It is a bloodbath in Big 12 basketball in the transfer portal right now.
Sick. So yeah, I'll pitch back to you. Like, one, is there a program that you think he automatically fits in? And then two, is there someone that you think is willing to upset that apple cart, that ecosystem that they've created?
It's so hard because it feels like the carousel is kind of stopped. Like everybody that was going to spin big, you mentioned this earlier in the show, everybody that was going to spin big probably went hard in the paint in the first window in the winter. So unless it's somebody that truly is panicking and panic buying because their option did not work out in the spring portal window or in spring football, not a mesh with their offense for whatever reason, just a bad evaluation on their staff's part. I don't know. You point to the West Coast schools because those are the ones that would be able to match what he's offering. But the way that this is played out as well, there's also just a baggage angle, right? Because
Yes.
you have to manage your locker room. And I think we need to, as fans, this is just a quick aside, I think we as fans need to kind of adjust our expectations a little bit of the locker room, because NFL teams typically handle this pretty well, and I think that's starting to trickle down to college teams. I think I'm not in college locker rooms, obviously, but it seems like players are more understanding than we maybe gave them credit for off the top of people. Obviously, we had the UNLV situation that blew up in everybody's face this year. But I think at these big time programs, there's kind of an understanding that like guys are trying to get their bags. We get it. Like we can move on from that. But there is sort of a locker room management aspect to this too. Like and a fan base management. Is your fan base going to be excited about welcoming in this guy that just held a major program hostage and lost, right? Like, are you going to be okay with your fan base, the blowback, maybe of you looking like like somebody that was, I don't even know a kind word to say, but like somebody that was willing to pay when another big time program saw the writing on the wall and was not. So I don't know where that program is. It's going to take a perfect match. It's probably going to take some humility on both parts, and it'll be really interesting to see how it all shakes out.
I think desperation is another key driving factor here. And, you know, as I'm sitting here thinking about more West Coast schools, UCLA, Arizona, both stick out. I mean, Arizona just lost Noah Fafita, right? Or is he still there?
I think he's still there, right?
Is he still? Oh boy. Well, then maybe Arizona's off the table. I don't know. This kind of feels like a Malachi Nelson situation, and that's not a. There's very few comparison points here, but a highly rated quarterback who's going to end up somewhere you didn't expect him to end up, I think is what I'm driving at, right? Malachi Nelson starts at USC, goes to Boise State. That doesn't work out, loses the job to Max Madsen, and now is at UTEP, right? I don't know that it's going to be that extreme for Nico, but the way that this has all come out and the way that this is played out in the court of public opinion, I don't want him on my team. I know he's a talented quarterback. Again, I keep setting all of this with the
so early in his development too. Like he's gonna be great.
Rocket arm, very athletic. Generally kept up with the speed of the game. For his first full year in SEC competition, acquitted himself well, right? Handled those games and got his team to the playoff. So I'm not saying he's a failed quarterback, but there is no doubt he played his hand terribly, right? I mean, Kenny Rogers, man, you've got to know when to hold him, you got to know when to fold him, and know when to walk away, and wait till your redshirt sophomore or your third year, right, to play your hand. I think this is just a case of terrible timing, of way too much bravado, and probably either a greedy family situation or an agent, a TikTok agent, telling him, "Yeah, bro, this works out. Watch this."
I think there's a lot of people involved, and it's not just a Nico problem. I think you can probably speak to this much more because of your experience, and I'll let you just roll out the red carpet and go off in just a second. But it seems like there's just a disturbing lack of awareness across college football in these situations. Awareness of the financial aspects of it, awareness of who's actually paying the bills and the actual market value. I think guys see that like On3 NIL value next to their name and probably think, oh, I can like On3. They've been the center of the story, but they're the first ones that have really published that NIL value. And I think that might be part of the problem, right? Like guys just see that and they start chasing a number that may or may not be based on reality. I don't know the algorithm that On3 uses. I'm sure that they have something to back that up, but it takes two to tango in that deal. Like there has to be someone willing to pay. And if you do this, you risk getting let out. Now, I did see a tweet real quick. I want to jump back to the schools that we were talking about. This is from a Georgia account, so no idea the validity of this, but apparently this is unsubstantiated, but apparently it's saying that Dan Lanning was the guy that tipped off Heupel that other schools were sniffing around for Nico. So Oregon probably, if that's true, Oregon probably not in, but that might lead you to believe that it's someone in the Big Ten or out on the West Coast.
trying to submarine a rival here. Yeah, I think that's an interesting part of it. ESPN's article this morning from Pete Thamel mentioned that the boosters at Tennessee are already contacting, quote, third parties with other programs to evaluate their quarterback options. So I love that there's just no pretense of doing this by the book. Like, money wins.
There's no
out at the end of
book.
the day.
Like, there's no actual book.
Very fair.
Yeah.
Very fair.
like we can say we want it to be above board and by the book, but there's no board and no book. Like, we jumped into this just allowing it to be the Wild West, and we're trying to, like, we keep saying that we think the House settlement is going to play this out. Now, I will say, Garrett, who couldn't be on the show today, made a good point in our group text saying, and we've all kind of said something along these lines, but he's really been pushing the market regulation. It will regulate itself.
Yeah.
Do you think this is the first step in the market kind of starting to correct itself and not just being hey, the players have all the leverage and it's just going to keep going up and up and up without anything stopping it?
It certainly seems so, and I mean, I've been talking about that crash back to reality since we started this show, right? I mean, that was one of the driving factors of why the school that I was at initially was hesitant to embrace NIL for everything that it was. It's why I ultimately got out of the sports marketing and the NIL side of things, because, you know, my associates and I looked at it and went, there's just no way this lasts. There's just no way that the appetite that players and schools have for it right now, those can't coexist in a progressively increasing amount for the rest of time, right?
It's a bubble, right?
It's
a bubble like
yes.
We've seen in economics and politics and world news time after time. .com, housing, you name it. It's a bubble that's just waiting for too much air to be inside of it.
Yeah. Well, and you know, shout out The Big Short. It's felt like a lot of these athletes have been selling schools suboptimal bonds, man. Like we're buying packages made up of hamburger meat. And you know, when it does burst or when it collapses, like there's a lot of people that are going to be stuck holding bags that they didn't want to be holding. I think, yeah, hopefully this does provide a reality check for athletes, for schools, because, you know, we are in a generation where all of these athletes look to the star by their name. They look to that On3 NIL evaluation these last couple of years, which, listen, I don't work for On3, never have. Early on, that evaluation was completely made up. Maybe there's a lot of statistical data behind it now. When it first came out, I can tell you it was completely made up. There was no way they could defend that. So, and it did throw a wrench in contract negotiations.
Well, you don't have to name names, but did you have people come to you saying, well, these people say I'm worth this much?
Yes.
And you're like,
we did.
No, dude.
Yes. I literally had multiple conversations with athletes where very nicely I said, that's not possible. That's what you are asking for is
because you have to have someone willing to pay. You can say you're worth, like, I can list my house right now for $600,000. It's not going to sell because it's not worth $600,000.
Yes. I'll give you an example. Athlete came to me asking for a luxury car. And I was on the phone with them and I said, I'll try. I will look. I don't know how realistic that's going to be given the market, given kind of your status. And again, that was as nice as I could possibly say, but I tried to preface it with, I don't know that that's a realistic expectation, but I will try. The conversations that I then had with motor dealerships, only cemented that. And a lot of it that came back to me was, yeah, we'd love the publicity, but the risk is not worth it on our side, because if that athlete goes and crashes that car, we're out a $250,000 car, all for a couple of TikTok posts. And that's, we're supposed to recoup our investment just based off of this player driving that car. Like, that doesn't make sense. Now, that was early days of NIL. We've obviously seen car dealerships and a whole lot more just shell out for big name athletes. So it did, the wallets opened more than initially when I was dealing with it. But that sentiment comes back around, because the second that you have a bad NIL deal, or you have something that doesn't go your way and doesn't give you the ROI that you were expecting, the market starts to shift, right? You have that happen enough times, you have their demands continue to go up. There's a law of diminishing returns. At some point, that brand, that booster, is not going to be able to shell out that money to provide that car, because it doesn't make financial sense for them. And so that's what we saw with Tennessee, where they said, no, your ceiling doesn't match that dollar amount. So we're not going to acquiesce to that. I do think that this is, long story short, I do think that this is the first step of hopefully some sort of leveling, some sort of regulating of the market, where, yes, if you are, an Arch Manning that brings all of this recognition with your name and probably all of these results on the field, then yeah, man, set your price. You're going to be able to get just about whatever you want. But if you're a mid-tier quarterback, or even a blossoming star quarterback that has the accolades in high school, maybe a good first season in college, but you haven't delivered on something that's actually going to drive conversions at the end of the day, the math doesn't add up.
I think what a lot of people support in NIL is kind of like how it is on Road to Glory on College Football 25. And that's just not how it is. It's collectives writing contracts that are more like a professional football team. But I think what we were all on board with at the beginning is what you're talking about, like an athlete leveraging their follower count, their social media clout, their fame, whether that be local, national, whatever, to being able to leverage that into a deal with local businesses or boosters or whoever that might be, that so they can profit off of their name, image, and likeness, right? Like, if you play Road to Glory on College Football 25, you start out as like a nobody, and then some random cryo place offers you an NIL deal, and it's not money related. It's like you get 3 free sessions of cryo or something if you just make a social media post.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we were kind of sold on NIL. And obviously, without the regulations, without the book, without the board, we are being just thrown into the wild, wild west. We talked about that time and time again. I am hopeful that with the House settlement kind of setting more or less, not a true salary cap, because there will still be payments outside of that, but more or less regulating and kind of keeping it above board how much money is available for revenue sharing. I'm hopeful that that, combined with the people that are writing these checks kind of realizing that ROI isn't there consistently, maybe realizing that you're paying a lot of money for your team to go 7-5 or 8-4 every year, or heck, 10-2 and getting blown out in Columbus in the playoffs. I'm hopeful that that kind of self-regulates this, and we kind of just come back to earth a little bit. I think that's the dream, that we kind of get back to it being, I'm the revenue sharing. It's going to create a lot of complications in and of itself, but the dream we were sold with NIL is we're going to get the stupid NCAA regulations of someone like Livy Dunn, right? Like, Livy Dunn should be able to profit off of her Instagram because of what she's been blessed with and the followers that she's able to generate. She should be able to profit off of that. That's what we were sold with NIL.
Yeah.
And it's just gone so far from that.
Definitely has. But I will say, is kind of, we wrap this up, I have some more hope that maybe the regulation does come. Maybe we haven't all lost our minds, because when I heard this story, middle of the week, I truly, and I might have texted you guys this. I was like, what's the point? Like,
if Tennessee didn't do what they did, we would have a crisis on our hands.
Yes.
Do you agree with that? Because I think
absolutely.
every sitting starting quarterback in the SEC would have done the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there was some kind of conversation behind the scenes at Tennessee or like some other schools calling Tennessee and being like, dude, like the house of cards is going to fall if you guys blink here.
Yes.
But because like I wouldn't say Tennessee is a winner necessarily in this, because I think it's going to be a really hard hill to climb without a starting quarterback. But I think they might have prolonged some sanity in college football by not blinking, because if they blinked and just gave in to what he wanted without the results on the field to back it up, every single sitting starting QB in the SEC, probably Big Ten, the top players on defense, we would have seen them all do the exact same thing. I firmly believe that.
Tennessee might be a martyr here. We might be talking about St. Heupel here, honestly. Saving the health of college football, because I was ready to be depressed. I was ready to truly throw up my hands for like the 18th time over the last couple of years and go, what's the point? Why are we doing this? I texted you guys. I was like, I might start having more fun playing college football in the video game than consuming the actual product. Because with all of the nonsense that has gone into it, like if Nico had just been able to go, nope, I'm worth 4 now and get it. Like you're saying, house cards, man. So I think college football as a whole should be rejoicing over this. I'm not saying pile on Nico and his family at all. I know social media is already
because it's not that we don't want him to get that if he's worth it. If he wins a Heisman, like we said at the very top of the show, if he would have just played this year, win a Heisman. Don't even win a Heisman. Be all conference. Be first team all conference. Win a playoff game. Perform well against upper echelon defenses. Then yeah, go get your money, dude. Like, and if Tennessee's not willing to do it, go find somewhere that will, and you'll have a much better market for it. But doing it from such a weak position and a school cowering from that weak position would have just been awful for the sport.
Certainly a choice. We'll continue to cover this and catalog the fallout of the Iamaleava transfer. He has supposedly already submitted the papers to transfer, so he's gone. He will be moving on. So we'll continue to cover this as it develops. But man, I think we're in an interesting spot. I think we're in a better spot than we were on Wednesday or Thursday when this all started to thunderstorm. And we'll see what the next dominoes are to fall, right? I mean, we got the Tennessee spring game here in a couple hours. Obviously,
appointment viewing, baby. We'll have a full breakdown on next week's pod.
we might just have to. So, for Trey Reeves, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, for reacting to the Iamaleava storyline with us. We invite your feedback, of course, in the comments at 3TechPod on our social media channels. We'd love to get your pulse here, figure out what you think and what Tennessee should do next, what Nico should do next. Definitely let us know in the comments. But until next time, everyone, so long.
Gracious, how about